Okay, sending data. Oh, we seem to be online. Doing a quick check. Online at YouTube and online at Facebook. Let's see. Oh, yeah, very good. Okay. Okay. Well, greetings, everyone. Wanted to let you know that the reason I made the change on the YouTube channel, and if you haven't signed up yet over at the YouTube channel, I highly suggest it because I'll have links there at the end of this. I'll also be taking questions in the last 5-10 minutes for anybody who will have questions. And what I'll be talking about today is Dr. Fauci and the NIH and COVID-19 and a bunch of other interesting things that I'm just trying to get you to ask questions and basically think about things that people aren't really thinking about right now. So let's start off with today. So what's today? Today is June 17th, 1984, which is 36 years after I was released. So today is the day, June 17th, that I had my full free day, and it was actually in Hong Kong, which was on my flight back to San Francisco after 11 months in prison in Vietnam. And that is today, June 17th in 1984. And if you remember the story, you probably saw it on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle back in 1984 when this article came out. It was actually May 19th when this shot was released with the article that came with it. And this right here, let me work on this right here for you. Open this up a little bit more. There we go. This is also the book. If you ever haven't had a chance to read the book, The Bamboo Chest, you can get it over at Amazon.com. It's available. It's the second edition. It was a top seller back in 2004, bestseller, New York Times, and re-released in a second edition, with which is now available. But I wanted to talk to you about government and my experiences with government. And actually, my experience with government started 2 weeks after this, when I was flown out to the Pentagon. So 2 weeks after my release on June 17th, I was flown out to the Pentagon, and I was debriefed by the JCRC, otherwise known, or we used to call it the POWMI division of the Pentagon. And basically, I was debriefed as to where I was, what I'd been doing in order to clarify any reports of Caucasians or non-Vietnamese in Vietnam during the war, so that it wouldn't conflict with stories about the MIAs that were coming out of Southeast Asia at the time. Again, this is also all available in the book that I wrote, the bestseller 2004, The Bamboo Chest. So if you haven't got a copy, go over to Amazon and pick up a copy of that right now, or at the end of this show. So what are we talking about? We're talking about Dr. Fauci. Who is Dr. Fauci? This is episode 22 of Treasure Quest Snake Island, The Real Story. And the reason I even started everything, writing the book, Treasure Quest Snake Island, The Real Story, actually was So You Want to Be a Reality TV Star, which was this book right here. Let's see, going down. There we go. That one. Yeah, this book right here. So You Want to Be a Reality TV Star. The whole reason I'm even starting the channel at YouTube, it was to promote this book. And the thing about this book is that, yeah, I talk about the treasure hunting expedition, well, the pseudo treasure hunting expedition that we had at Discovery Channel, which, if you read the book, you already understand the full story, which is there is no reality in reality TV. What I find striking and actually intimidating about this whole experience is that we now have an audience who watches TV specifically to be informed, and you're not being informed because you're being hit with drama. And that's what it's all about now with reality TV, which I originally was hired on with the idea that this was actually going to be a documentary. Now, there is a way to modify things in order to add add drama into a documentary, but you don't do it in the actual scripting. And I explain that in how you do an actual documentary, which is you find a team and you document what they do and you follow along with them. What you don't do, but what is done in reality TV, is you script everything and you tell the players what to do. And the only reason you bring people with real credentials, i.e. someone who was in prison in Vietnam, who was using the vehicle of a Brit who was going after treasure on the island of Vietnam, off the west coast of Vietnam, to find out what had happened to the American MIAs. So, let's continue. And as we continue, let's get back to Dr. Fauci, because if you've been paying attention to the news, there's some things that just don't add up, right? So what doesn't add up with Dr. Fauci? Well, when we look at what Wikipedia has to say, it's interesting that he started over at the NID back in 1984, same year that I got released from Vietnam. But as I read this thing, it's really clear at how politically charged all the science is becoming. And this is what's really intimidating, is that here we've got somebody who wrote this in on Wikipedia, which is to say, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Fauci was praised as a national hero for offering trustworthy information on the facts of the disease and the precautions that should be taken, though he received some criticism from right-wing pundits and political commentators. Well, that in itself makes me wonder why is it a right-wing pundit and a political commentator who asks questions? I've got questions. Am I right-wing? I prefer to be called someone who is an American, because do you remember what it was like to be called an American when you're an American? Which is, you could actually debate politics, you could actually debate ideas. Now you can't debate anybody. Now it's automatically to fists and violence, as we've been seeing in Seattle and other parts of the country, that you can't actually talk with somebody and communicate with somebody. So you go from protest and it goes to riot. And that's the way our society is going. And even here, this is such a politically charged statement that when you start looking at what I'm looking at, if you're left or right, it doesn't really matter. You should be asking the questions of who's trying to bring a cure. And actually, things that they keep on talking about is vaccine. So has anybody asked the question of why don't we have a vaccine for the original SARS coronavirus, the mother of the COVID-19? So here we have Fauci, no scientific evidence. The coronavirus was made in a Chinese lab. What I do find, going back to this statement, is that when he's talking about or whoever wrote about the criticism from right-wing pundits and political commentators, I do notice that right-wing pundits and political commentators are questioning things, which they should be. But what I find even more interesting is that the left, or somebody like National Geographic, which has changed quite a bit from when I was a kid. See, when I was a kid, you'd read National Geographic with the idea of, I'm going to get informed, and by getting informed, that means that I can make sound decisions. Now what it's become is basically a propaganda piece. Because as you'll notice, no scientific evidence that the coronavirus was made in a Chinese lab. Well, by tomorrow, I'm going to be showing you that there's a lot of evidence. And by the end of this, you'll have some definite understandings of it was modified. And by tomorrow, you might be wondering, is there even any question anymore whether it's actually a bioweapon? But what's most striking about Fauci and the NIH is that as an American, that's your tax dollars. And your tax dollars went to funding all this. And if that shouldn't basically piss you off, that remember when the Chinese said that the COVID came from U.S. Army athletes who were competing in China? Well, what they're trying to get across is, it's American made. Well, it wasn't American made, but it was definitely American paid for, and that pisses me off, because what that means is that Here, your government is sending out dollars to enemy states, because China is a flat out an enemy state of the United States and just about every other free country in the world, for those who think that, well, you can negotiate with the CCP, because they're really good at negotiating and they learn how to play the negotiation game. And we'll talk about that in terms of China and the understanding China. But here's this article that came out, another one, and this is interesting. Here, again, NPR. I wouldn't consider that a like Fox News or Breitbart type of publication. And it's interesting that the virus researchers cast doubt on the theory of coronavirus lab accident. So what I'm starting to see, and you may start seeing as you read these articles, is that there's this covering of asses of scientists, because they've done something they shouldn't have been doing. Because, you know, it's kind of like that scene with was it Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, where he's actually playing the character of Michael Crichton, the author of the book, and asking, it's not the idea that, you know, can you do it, but should you do it? And that's the biggest lesson about this, is that these people should not be screwing around with this kind of stuff. And the result of, I mean, it was a Dr. Hatfield. Hatfield is a retired, he's not retired, he's actually an educator, but he's a scientist, and he was one of our scientists working at Fort Detrick on our bioweapons program. And he was interviewed over on the War Room Pandemic, you know, by Bannon. And Bannon said, you know, was asking, so what do you think this was a virus that was created, you know? And his response, which again goes in line with scientists or the critical thinking scientists, is like, you know, you would never work on the coronavirus. And why wouldn't you work on the coronavirus? Because it's too unstable. It's too uncontrollable. But this is the thing about China, because China has a very long record of not really having respect for life. And I'll show you that tomorrow. And we'll go back to Korea and Mao Zedong and how that mentality is carried through, and the understanding of the philosophies that are carried through that aren't very well represented in the West, because they're actually very contrary to thinkings and ideas in the West, for those, especially for those of us who were raised in the United States, and, you know, those of us who may have not been educated in the what I call like the new playbook for Washington, D.C. nowadays, which is The Prince by Machiavelli. So basically everybody over in, that's why I call it the snake pit. So my background going into Washington, yeah, back in 1984, that's my introduction. And that's why I began to learn about Washington, the city of Washington, Washington, D.C., which is the capital of our country. And this is where all this has been playing out, enabling our wealth and our monies to go off and be used by an enemy state to basically design a bioweapon that escaped, and even though it was perhaps not intentionally released, the idea that it escaped and then was taken advantage of as an opportunity in which to quote even out the playing field. Okay, so here we got the Wuhan. This is the article, and this is the name. This is a very, very important name, Peter Daszak. I've talked about him before. Peter Daszak. And who is Peter Daszak? But let's go and see. It says, yeah, virus researchers here. It says, virus researchers say there's virtually no chance that the new coronavirus was released as a result of a laboratory accident in China or anywhere else. And going further at the accident theory. See, remember when Trump said there was the idea, and it's kind of like it's backed off, but like people are jumping back onto it again. And the thing about it is, he was right from day one, and he even mentioned deep state. And I'm going to show you what deep state really is, and this is what really pisses me off, is the deep state, again, it's nothing more, and it's not even like Bannon says, it's not deep, you know, it's not covert, it's in your face. And I'll show you how in your face it is, because other people have made comments about this, but who's actually showing you the documentation of how in your face this is? And we'll go and find Mr. Well, actually he's a doctor, professor PhD. Daszak. Yeah, scrolling down. The president. Yes. But see, we got to read the stuff right on top, and that's the part. That's the part right there. You know, it's all about the environment, politically correct stuff. You know. Rather, the experts interviewed by NPR all believe that the virus was transmitted between animals and humans in nature, as has happened in previous outbreaks, from Ebola to the Marburg virus, and with other known coronaviruses such as SARS and MERS. Well, there's a big question as to whether Ebola and SARS and MERS, SARS the original, and MERS, the one that was from the Middle East, whether those were natural. Because a lot of people are saying that, no, those were created in a lab also. And Ebola, there's a big question whether that was actually created at Fort Detrick. So I'll leave you to Google that one. But this one here, a statement. The real risk is in the wild, in the way people interact with wildlife around the world, says Peter Daszak, president Eco Health Alliance in New York City, a group that researches the origins of pandemics. That's where we need to be focused if we want to really do something about preventing the next pandemic. So let's scroll down. An unlikely path. Many questions remain about how exactly the coronavirus, known officially as SARS-CoV-2, began to spread in people. Its closest genetic cousin so far is another coronavirus found in Chinese horseshoe bats. Researchers believe SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus 2, likely made its way to people directly through bats or through an intermediate animal. Okay. Now remember, when things like this happen, when you've got like a communicable disease that goes from an animal to, let's say, another species, in our situation would be, let's say, a bat to a human, or a bat to a pig to a human. That's what they had said, before with the SARS-CoV originally. And if, what was that? Contagion. Remember the movie Contagion that freaked everybody out? Yeah. That was spooky. But isn't it wild? Like, all these events in history that, in present events, all these events right now are like replaying all these horror flicks that we've seen. And it's almost like Hollywood's directing this. Is this just going to be another reality TV show? That'd be pretty freaking freaky, huh? So let's go down, and we go down, and it says, oh yeah, again, those. So what this is NPR. Yeah, MERS. That was the issue with MERS, was the camels. Remember, they were saying, oh yeah, it was spread over to camels, then from camels got into humans. Oh man, these are the evolution. Think about evolution. Things happen, occurring. Remember, like on Treasure Quest Snake Island, when we had the golden lancehead viper. How did the golden lancehead viper occur, and how did it become so deadly and so venomous? Okay. Well, it happened over thousands and thousands of years, because Snake Island was a part of that area of South America. It was a peninsula. Okay. And over the thousands of years, and erosion, I should say, it all got washed away, so that instead of what was a peninsula before, off that landmass, off of South America, off of Brazil, Snake Island became an island. And while that was occurring, you had a species of snake that had origins in a snake that's on the was it the jacará? Jararaca. Jararaca is what the Brazilians call it down there. Is based on the the Indian name for it in that area. This was an offspring of that, but the reason that it was smaller and also much more venomous is because the only food that was available on that island by that time of evolution of thousands and thousands of years were migratory birds. So that'd be like albatrosses, gulls, that kind of stuff, and also these small, but these snakes are not big enough to eat those, but there were these small little songbirds and everything that you see on the show that land and nest on that island. And so by nesting on that island, what happened was they ended up developing into a species that was extremely venomous because it needed to develop, in order to survive, that's the natural selection, the ones who could have a more venomous, or actually a more potent venom, were able to kill the bird more rapidly, and by doing so, they could eat that. So if they're keeping themselves fed, they would then continue to procreate. And those who are not able to, they would just die off, okay? Thousands of years for this type of evolution. When we're looking at the COVID-19 or the SARS-CoV coronavirus 2, or I'd call it the CCP virus, and you'll know why tomorrow. This happened in 10 years? So you went from SARS coronavirus to SARS coronavirus 2 in 10 years. Okay, that's mind-blowing, because there should be books written about just the development of it. Not the idea that, oh, what is it? What does it do? How is it affecting us? No, just the idea that it went in 10 years from one evolution to the next evolution. That is amazing. And I'm going to show you that it's not so amazing, and it's actually been designed, and it was created, and it was manipulated, and as an American, your tax dollars went to pay for it. Oh, yeah. That pisses me off. Okay. So if you're wondering about the economy and all that kind of stuff, we're going to talk about that, because that's what the whole thing about these 3 episodes. So this first episode is just getting you set up with the idea of this is not natural. It was man-made. It was created. It was also paid for. It was paid for with your tax dollars. And then we go into the situation that people who aren't into the kumbaya, New World Order, globalist movement that's been going on since 1946, and they've actually found a way to use our own politicians against us, because a lot of our own politicians were thinking, well, hey, the common man would want to improve the world and have a better life, and if we can show you through capitalism and all this kind of stuff and democracy that you'll join us and you'll think better of it. But not understanding the principle and the understanding of the Communist Party, and actually all communists. And this is the thing about it. People will say, oh, well, Vietnam's okay. Come on, look at Vietnam. Vietnam is communist. The same SRV, the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, that threw me in prison and held me there for 11 months instead of, 2 weeks? That would have been like normal. Hey, I snuck in your country and I got kicked out. Okay, persona non grata. Communism is freaking evil, and it's evil because of what it's all about. It has only one thing and one objective, and that is to remain in control. So it's going to burn all its own people in China. It's going to burn all these people around the world. It's going to screw the whole economy globally, because all that matters is they just have to stay in power in China. Okay? Remember that as we go through this. And it's the aiders and abettors. Were they consciously doing that? Were they thinking? I bet you, if you were to talk to them, they could actually say, "No, we were just trying to come out with a cure for SARS coronavirus, the original. We were just trying to find a cure, and something that But this is the key about it. China needed to be the one to find that out. Again, this is the whole idea of showing how China, and specifically, it's not China because there's free China. Free China is Taiwan right now, and there used to be a free Hong Kong, and that, because of a broken contract, is no longer either. So we go through and we go back to this Peter Daszak. Peter Daszak. Who's Peter Daszak? Yeah, okay, let's get to Peter Daszak. Okay, whoop, let's not drop to the caves. Let's type in Peter Daszak. See, this is where you find out about your government. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Let's type in our buddy. Daszak. Whoop. There we go. Getting some issues there with that thing. Okay, Daszak. And I don't even know if I have to type in his first name. But let's go over here and submit the query. So, comes up, says, oh, well, within this time, because in the fiscal years, he hasn't been getting money. Mainly because the cat's getting out of the bag. But, whoa, look at this. Risk of viral emergence from bats. Risk of viral emergence from bats. Project AI079231. Year submitted 03. Peter Daszak. Okay. Echo Health Alliance. Look at that. Echo Health Alliance. Now, what that tells me, when I look back at this article right here by NPR, is that's called a conflicted source. Remember, I became a journalist in 1983. I became a photographer, but it also meant that I had to ask questions and I had to find out what was really happening so that I could report the story along with those photographs that I was taking at the time. So one of the big questions that I'm asking is like, NPR, why do you feel it's appropriate that every one of the people that you are interviewing on this show, actually there's a show too if you want to listen to it. There's a radio broadcast, from KBBI. Well, this is KBBI here, but the NPR channel. And it's called a conflicted source. Because if you're using a source like this, you might as well just say, this is a propagandist for whatever front they're covering or trying to protect. Okay? And what he's trying to protect, Peter Daszak is trying to protect, Shengli. Shengli is the bat lady that we had talked about before. Now the bat lady comes up in here, but let's get into this, because what exactly is this? Project title: Risk of Viral Emergence from Bats. Understanding the risk of bat coronavirus emergence. Understanding the risk of bat coronavirus. Oh yeah, again and again and again. Just keeps on coming. 2015. Oh yeah, we're just flying along. 2015, 2017, 2019, 2008, 2012. Oh yeah, 2012, 2011. See, now here's the pandemic potential of Nipah virus in Bangladesh. So when he really starts getting going is about 2014, 2008. Okay, so that's the initial start of looking at all this. And let's look at the money. Oh yeah. So yeah. Here we go. So bats, $597,112. How do you get $112 or $12 or $2 on the end for funding? Again, who runs NIAID? Oh yeah, that's Dr. Fauci. So $611,000 and $611.90. Look at that. $630,000. $630,445,000. Jesus. $494. Yep, that's not part of it. Let's go back up here. Let's see if there's any more down here. Let's go back up here. So look at all that. You got the years. You got who's got it. Who's the funnel. This is the funnel. And this is the funnel all the way to Wuhan, to that Wuhan lab we're going to take a look at. And we're going to really look at tomorrow. But let's click on this one. And let's go down here. See? And I'll have these links. You can see that right here. You just need to know how to do the search. Use their search engine and pop projectreporter.nih.gov. Remember what I said? Remember what I said about why it was so easy to convict the war criminals at the end of World War II at the Nuremberg trials? And it wasn't just the Nuremberg trials. Nuremberg trials are just like the most famous ones because there was a movie made about it. There were actually a variety of them. But the reason it was so easy is because that's the thing about socialists. Socialists are like phenomenal note takers. They're bureaucrats. And that's the definite. When I think of socialism, I just think about a bureaucrat, because of the epitome of a bureaucrat, because they've got to report everything and make sure that everything they do is recorded. And 9 times out of 10, it's in order for them to get the recognition for what they've been doing. Except in this situation, I kind of am getting the idea that they probably wish that they didn't have record for what's happening here. But see, let's look at this. It says, emerging zoonoses are a significant threat to global public health and our economies. The majority are caused by pathogens that emerge with increasing frequency from wildlife hosts. Here they talk about, well, okay, so AIDS, HIV, chimpanzees. And that's always been a big question. Is it because they naturally came from the chimpanzees? Or was it because of research that was done in order to create the polio vaccine? You ever read about that? Yeah. Keeps on coming back to this idea that, wow, should you be really screwing around with that kind of stuff? Because it might blow up in your face and like kill a lot of people. SARS-CoV coronavirus from bats and civets. Nipah virus from fruit bats. This group of diseases alone causes tens of thousands of deaths each year. Well, there's more than tens of thousands now. It's getting into the hundreds of thousands, right? It's like, how many hundreds of thousands are we getting up to now? How many by the end of summer? And that's the thing about it. It's like, it's been so politicized that now you wear a mask or don't wear a mask. And you wear a mask or don't wear a mask based on, are you right wing or left wing? Are you conservative or you're quote liberal? God, man, that's a misnomer. What is liberal? Yeah, because liberals are not very liberal. They're actually all about control. While conservatives are actually about open business and free market and all kind of stuff. So that seems a lot more liberal than conservative. But it's amazing. It's kind of like communism, because communism is not really communism. Communism is totalitarianism, as it's been expressed in world history. But then you got somebody who's always got to come as well, because it's not communism. We have an opportunity to bring real communism. Not getting the idea that the reason that it became totalitarianism is because communism does not work. It does not take into account the human factor. And one of the things of the human factor is covering your ass. And it doesn't matter whether you are some scumbag criminal who's like just trying to get away with something, or you're actually a person with a PhD or an MD or a high title, and you're trying to cover your ass. And I don't know. Would they be going after Dr. Fauci and Peter Daszak? And those are like some high crimes if it can be proven, right? Because one of the things I'm looking at right here, this is the thing. This is the one that really sticks out. Okay. Number 3. Remember, this is the description of what's going to happen. The risk of emergence, okay? The risk of viral emergence from bats, okay? So we go down here and we scroll. And we've got 3, using a range of in vitro techniques, including infection and bat cell culture, examining the pathogenesis of these new viruses and a pool of available bat viruses which have not yet emerged in humans. Have not yet emerged in humans. So how do you take that? Do you take that in terms of they're going to just appear, or they may accidentally appear in humans because of the result of the work that we're creating here? But that right there is telling you that they're modifying. They're modifying the original SARS coronavirus. It's documented. It's right there, man. It's like, this is just mind-blowing. And it's like, people are not looking at it. Or, it's something that is defined as denialism. The definition of denialism is to look at something and not be willing to accept what's really there. And to look at this and think that the very people and the very organizations and institutions that are supposed to protect us from this, i.e. disease, pandemics, epidemics, are actually, possibly, more likely, creating them. So let's take a look at this. Remember this scene from Discovery Channel's Treasure Quest Snake Island? Remember when there's Dr. Brian Greig Fry, and there's Megan Haney Greer, and we're all together in the cave. Remember that scene where we're going in the cave, and then they had that scripted scene where I'm stuck in the cave, and then Jeremy says, "Oh, look out, Cork, there's a snake." Yeah, it's all scripted. But that's media for you. And that's the media right now, remember, that is not willing to check sources and wonder why Peter Daszak said there's no way that it could have been the result of any type of lab work that led to it. And he's quoting how great of a scientist Dr. Shengli is. So let's get back to the person who's involved in this. This is getting paid in this one. How much? Yeah, on the results. Oh, what does it say in the results? Host and viral, all this stuff in here. Yep, see, and remember what I said? We're gonna look at that one right there. That's the Nature article. That's a Nature article that basically hosts and traits, blah blah blah. So yeah, there's all these publications, because you remember there's an old saying about getting your tenure, which is publish or die. Publish or die. Okay, so here we go. And Treasure Quest Snake Island, Brazil. Okay, and now here we are. How China's Batwoman hunted down viruses. That's Scientific American. Remember, publish or die. Here it is. How China's Batwoman hunted down viruses from SARS to the new coronavirus. Shengli. Okay. Which is, if you know Chinese, her last name is Shi, and that's what confuses a lot of people. So her real, in Western eyes, her name is Zhengli Shi. Okay, doctor. Now, this is the person who also was, you've probably heard about, she was the one who was known for like, oh my God, I hope that when they first heard about the SARS coronavirus that it didn't escape from her lab. Okay. So this is the thing which is really interesting because, okay, look at this picture. One of the things that I was really vehement about, I did not want to do, is I did not want to go in these caves because anybody who's done even a little bit of studying of biology, you know, my minor was biology, and I was going to school, and I thought I was going to be a doctor. I thought I was going to actually be a cardiologist. It was right when I came back from Central America, and I'd actually had enough experience helping put people back together. So I did not want to go in that cave because just off the respiratory ailments and everything that you could get were just, you don't go into caves. And a lot of it revolves around bats and the things that bats carry and the resulting stuff as a result of that. So look at that and see how I'm like, no way, man. I just do not want to deal with going in unprotected like this. Okay. And that's just with just a normal cave. I don't spelunk. I'm not a spelunker for that very reason, because I hear guys coming out. It's like, oh man, this is like, I've been hacking this way. You know, from the show, you know, Megan, she was always complaining about when she was on that, she was an extra and a stunt woman as a diver. I think that was Turistas, where she had to swim. And she said because all that stuff was in the water, she had this horrific hack that just kept on going on and on and on as a result of that that scene where she had to swim and play the lead female actress. So here you go. So no, based on that, so let's look at what they're doing for their protective. Isn't it? So here's the bat lady, you know, and she's releasing a bat right there, right? Okay, so that bat. So she's just wearing, what's she wearing? She's wearing like a windbreaker and this little sweater, and she's got her headlight there, and she's got her face mask right there, you know, on the bush, and she's just released this bat. Okay. Now, considering how dangerous and how communicative the present SARS coronavirus 2 or COVID-19 or CCP virus is, why would she just be dressed like that, right? Okay. So then we go further down in the same article. Photographs taken while they're capturing these bats, you know, that they're going to be working on. So here again, here's her colleagues. He's wearing his cargo pants and shirt, and the only thing real protective that I see is she's wearing a head net just to cover her head, just to keep all the dust in the caves, all kinds, from getting down on her head. They're all wearing some head protection. Basically, they're just wearing surgical gloves and a mask. Okay, so that's the capture of a wild bat, and pay attention to these photographs, because here is what it is when you're catching a bat in the wild, and then you take it to the lab, right? Okay, so remember the pre-bat in the lab, now just the surgical method. I would, when I was on Treasure Quest Snake Island, you know, when I was here, yeah, this place, I would have preferred to have had surgical gloves and shoot, I'd like to have like rain gear on to go into those places that we were in. But at least we're in surgical gloves and a mask, just like these people, right? These researchers. So then we scroll down, and here's a little bit of what they're doing, which this makes a little bit more sense, okay? You've got guys wearing protective clothing and see their shoes. That's the proper way. That's the minimum. I mean, the minimum proper way to go into a cave. See all that green stuff on there? Yeah, just by breathing some of that stuff, that could put you in trouble. And that's just the mold, all kind of stuff that's in caves like that. And think about bats that develop over remember, the thousands of years of development. Again, thousands of years of development. Man. So that's what people should be wearing going in to go get these bats. And that's just the normal bat that's been there before. Any taking it over to the lab. So let's get to the lab, okay? And any more pictures here? Scrolling down. Oh, see Daszak's team. Daszak. See, so Daszak again is being quoted. Daszak, again, conflicted source, major conflicted source. Go back and read that NPR article. Reading it with the idea that wow, so he made all his money off of sending the money to Shengli, the bat lady. The one, yeah, bat-borne coronavirus will cause more outbreaks. Oh, that's like being predictive, right? Yeah, okay. So here's one of the things, talking about security. This is the famous picture that suddenly disappeared. I'll show you evidence of that. So, see the seals? They talk about, oh, well, this is the Wuhan lab, and it's a special lab. There are other photographs even of our Fort Detrick, and one of the reasons that they closed Fort Detrick is because of similar stuff. Lackadaisical attitudes amongst the researchers in terms of being safe and secure. So you've got all that, see leakage and everything, all the leakings, the seals, all this stuff. This is what you don't want to see in a lab that has some of the most dangerous, and I mean the most dangerous, the most dangerous freaking viruses. And they're playing with these things, and they're playing with it like, hey, no problem. So here we go. This was a picture that was released by a China Daily, and then suddenly that was the same photograph. So this is actually from this article. Terrifying photos hastily deleted by China set coronavirus alarm bells ringing. Okay. Remember what I said about the CCP? The CCP is all about hiding its responsibility for things that it doesn't want to be responsible for. Okay, images of broken seals on doors of fridges housing deadly pathogens have emerged from a high-security Chinese laboratory close to the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak in Wuhan, adding to speculation the virus may have leaked from a research facility. Okay, remember, this is all about the idea of how the media is being used, and the media is being used against you. And it's up to people like me and people who are willing to actually look at it and actually have a real background in research, investigation, journalism, when it was actually being practiced. And it's amazing that you have to go to YouTube to find stuff that you should be getting from, let's say, NPR. You should be getting it from Fox News. You should be getting it from CNN. These ABC, CBS, all these people should be reporting to you, and what's turning out to be, it's like whatever side they happen to be on. So now you're required to look at both and discern what are they talking about in terms of the same topic, and then find out what's the facts as compared to what's their analysis. And the analysis can be very, very inaccurate when you look at some of the things that they talk about, because a lot of times, do they have field experience? It's kind of like when I was in Central America, and we'd be recruiting into our teams working in the field. This is actually later when I was actually a combatant. And the questioning is this guy going to actually keep up and understand what we have to deal with? And a lot of times it had to be based on the idea how much combat experience they had. Did they have that much of combat experience? do they have enough experience with the language? Do they have enough experience with the locals? How much experience was that? And that would determine on how they could be implemented and be used as an asset. Okay, so moving down. Now this is the thing that's really interesting, and this is how you start looking, and I'll talk about this further tomorrow. So this graph right here, looking at this, what do you see? You see all these colors right here going around, the bat coronavirus, evolutions, and you got MERS right here. See, so there are all these coronaviruses, right? And here's coronaviruses over here too. But this is the thing that really strikes out, and that's the cut of the pie. So look at the pie, and you look at this, and you say, why is that there? Why is that there? See, because if this was not manipulated by a human being in a lab, there's no way that you would have that coloration in there. That's saying containing furin-specific cleavage sites in sequence. The furin cleavage sites is to enable a virus to connect to you. That's actually one of the reasons that I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying, hey, when I deal with viruses, I take zinc. Zinc is very powerful. And the reason is because it's an inhibitor. It inhibits the ability for a virus to connect to your body. Okay? So, based on this, you see that this thing right here, this that I've got a red arrow going towards, that red arrow is telling you this shouldn't be here. This should not be here. And it stands out because it's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be over on this side, but yet it's on the left side, which means that somebody cleaved that. That is a true cleavage, which is somebody manipulated it and put that there because that has that. It has the ability, and that's the coronavirus. Remember, it's got the idea that it's called a corona because it's got crowns, so it's like that connectivity between the crown is what enables it to bind to us, and by binding to us, it then is able to attack us. You know, that's why the other ones that don't attack us, like bat COVID, that one, all these up here, they don't attack us in that. So you know furin specifics, cleavage sites in the sequence. This is very, very important. And they're saying that this suddenly appeared magically within, what, 10, 15 years at the most? 10 years. They're saying, everybody's saying 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. There's no way that could have happened. It's impossible. These are things that happen over 1,000 minimum, 1,000 years minimum. Okay. So remember, this is the thing about it. Okay. So let's go back to the picture. Let's go back to the picture. Oh, yes. This picture up here. Okay. Yeah, there's Dr. Shengli, okay, or Shengli Shi. That's her in the natural world of the bat. This is her after you've screwed around with everything and you turn out a COVID-19, ready to connect with people on a way that nobody could imagine and are continuing to learn about. See, this is the way they work in a lab. Now, this is the PPE that everybody was talking about. Do we have enough PPEs? Yeah, because most of the stuff is used in places that most people don't even want to go into, i.e. a virology institute where they screw around with these things. That if they get into you and then they get out to the rest of the population, how do you stop the wildfire? And that's what it is. It's basically a major brush fire going on. Okay, so. Let's see, we're at 49 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to try work on closing this up because I want to get out to anybody who's got any questions. But compare. This is another indicator of why she's in her lab working on these things here, because she knows that these are much more they're much more dangerous. Okay, because they've already been developed. They've already been modifying it. Okay. And here's the effect when it's totally clear that it's modified, and this would be like if it was naturally occurring. This is the way you would be dressing if you were catching the bat, this type of bat in the wild. Okay, so show me the money. Going back to the money, and you've seen that previously, where we were looking at all that money was being sent over to Peter Daszak and the Eco Health Alliance. So what does the NIH, where does it get its funding? Okay, so Americans and people throughout the world. Let's get back. So let's get back to Americans and people throughout the world depend on the National Institute of Health, NIH, to provide authentic and unbiased studies. The NIH is a federal agency part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. It's the nation's medical research agency devoted to improve health and saving lives. Under the umbrella of the NIH comes 27 different components called institutes and centers. These include the NCI, the NIMH, the NHLBI, and the NIAAA, among others. Now, here's the most important aspect of that, and that each has its own specific research agenda focusing on particular diseases. And scrolling down, Congress invests over $30 billion of taxpayer money in biomedical research each year. Most of the funding goes to scientists outside of the NIH, which manages the grants. So they manage the grants and provides the direction. So the direction is gone towards China and the design. And it brings up the question, why would they do it over there? Because of the laws in China that contrast with ours. You're not able to do the types of research in this country that the Chinese and the CCP specifically have no problems doing over there. And tomorrow what I'm going to be talking about is how, when you deal with scientists and researchers and labs and institutions over there, you are always dealing with the politics. And the politics, and that's the difference between the way Congress here, when they're investing money, they're just sending the money out, and they're getting, and if there's anything, it's based on how they're helping the people who got them into office. Okay, and that's the thing about it. In contrast, you got the CCP who controls everything, and nothing happens without the CCP in China. And when you're dealing with the CCP and you're working on something that could actually be used as a bioweapon, i.e., it could be used by the PLA, which is the People Liberate. Don't you love those colloquialisms that are just try to get you all warm and fuzzy, like the People's Liberation Army? So who is the one who's been killing most of the Chinese over the last half century? Yeah, the PLA. It's that old saying, the ones who kill most of people are most often killed, murdered, assassinated by their government. And that's why it's really important to make sure that the CCP doesn't gain ground in the rest of the world in the way it has by taking over debt from other countries and taking over the resources of those countries. Yeah, we can even talk about how, we spilled all this blood and money over in Afghanistan and continue to spill all this blood and money over in Afghanistan. And guess who's mining all the resources out of Afghanistan right now? Yeah, Chinese-owned companies. Mining companies. Does that make sense to you? Doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, so I hope you find this interesting and educational, but also at the same time, what I'm trying to do mainly is just try to get you to think about things and ask yourself questions and follow up on these links and information that I've put together for you to look at and think about and share with other people. Because here's one of the things that people weren't really paying attention to while all this stuff with the COVID was going on, and that is that Hillary Clinton was actually supposed to testify in about her email scandals. And you'll find out as we get closer to, I think in September is when she's planned to actually testify. But there was the appeals court that she has been trying to keep out of having to say anything. But all that was all held quiet by the media. So why was the media keeping so quiet about this? And the only people who are paying attention to this who have, people who are vested, quote, here's the political agenda again, right or left. So of course, the right is paying attention to what's happening while COVID-19 and the economy and the BLM riots and all that kind of stuff are happening, and it's getting hardly any coverage because all the coverage is going towards the BLM riots, the Black Lives Matter riots and protests and the COVID-19. It's called the bait and switch, and it's basically just hiding trails. And the key is citizens, and actually citizens of the world, need to be paying attention to this, because what happens in the U.S. will affect you in your country too. So, what's this all about? 3 men make a tiger. This is an old Chinese proverb. San Ren Cheng Hu, but it's actually there's actually another way to say it. it's I forget. It's a Chinese proverb or Cheng Yu. This is actually, I got this from Wiki. It's actually closest to accurate. But 3 men make a tiger. It's the idea that, if you repeat a lie over and over and over, it actually becomes a lie. I mean, it becomes truth. And that's the 3 men. If 3 men keep on saying the same thing, wow, suddenly the tiger they were talking about actually becomes the truth. And that's the way the media is running right now. And that is that they keep on repeating all this stuff like the COVID-19 was not developed in a lab. Or as Dr. Fauci was saying, what is it? Oh, yes. No scientific evidence the coronavirus was made in a Chinese lab. Remember, this is National Geographic. This isn't a leftist rag that you'd find in Berkeley back in the 60s or when I was over there in the early 80s. No, this is a, quote, science magazine. And when you go and start looking at the research that's being done, and then you get the NPR with all this stuff, and they are basically saying, well, Trump doesn't know what he's talking about, because all these researchers are saying that no, it was never designed in a lab. But if you look at the backgrounds of each one of these people, they're all vested in the fact that it can't be released to the public that it was actually designed in a lab. So going back, closing off on this, I've shown you this. I'm going to show you this again tomorrow, and we really delve deep into this, because that little pie chart over there, yeah. And remember, this is public information. You can Google this. It's Googleable. Hey, Jim. This is all completely Googleable. And yet, it's been like weeks, months for President Trump's intelligence services to come up with, yes, it's probably, and we'll talk about 5 eyes tomorrow. Yeah, 5 eyes, the 5 eyes. Oh, yeah. And they're talking about cell phone coverage. The only thing interesting about the cell phone coverage is when it started, not that it did start. We'll talk about caskets and cremations and all kind of stuff, and understanding when things really started to get rolling. And I've got friends who do business in China. I got friends that did business in China. Friends that will never do business in China again after all this stuff that's come down, because they know. And those who have not dealt with the CCP directly, I mean, I have no problems doing business in Taiwan. And if Hong Kong could ever get free again, I would love to do business in Hong Kong. But and China, mainland China, but not while the CCP is in power. And that's the thing. You got to separate. You have to separate the CCP. You have to separate the Chinese Communist Party from the people, because they don't represent the people. They are controlling the people. Look at it this way. They're the security guards, and the Chinese people are the prisoners. And that's what it's all about. Every communist country, that's the way it's run. And I don't care how much money they make. And you say, well, whoa, what about Vietnam? And I go, it's a communist country. And as long as it remains communist, it will never have the opportunity for the Vietnamese people to be free. And if you want to talk to anybody who's had conflict with that, go down to Southern California. There used to be a lot of people who still remember what it was like and who went through those prisons. And remember, I have personal experience in those prisons. I remember what it was like to deal with the physical abuse, that what I was getting was bad, but it was nowhere near what the Vietnamese were getting, because they didn't have the option of whether they were going to get out, or escape, or that they were going to get some freedom, which all I could do was either try to escape, as I wrote about in the book, or hopefully somebody's going to pay my ransom to get me out of there. So, again, my anniversary of my freedom from Vietnam in 1984. Hey, June 17th, man. Oh, this is my Juneteenth day. Okay. So if you want to read about it, please go over to Amazon.com and get a copy of The Bamboo Chest. Read about what it was like for me when I was 18 years old, and I snuck into Vietnam, and I was taken prisoner by the Vietnamese. And I was sneaking in because I was trying to find out what happened to the American MIAs that had disappeared during the Vietnam War. And who knew that I would actually go POW MIA? Because they lied to my family, and they lied to the State Department. They lied to everybody, saying that they didn't have me for 3 months. And during that time was the worst physical abuse I'd experienced.
during my incarceration in Vietnam. Oh, and yeah, there's the Front Page Chronicle. That's actually when when newspapers still kind of like reported the news instead of acted as propaganda funnels for whoever's paying them. Yeah. So let me go back to here. Yeah. So we ask questions. Where's the NIH getting the money? It's your tax dollars. Your tax dollars paid for the coronavirus to be developed, and then it escaped. And why were the Chinese developing it with our money? They talk about the 1,000 talents. We'll talk about 1,000 talents tomorrow. Program that the Chinese had. Oh, and remember Charles Lieber? Yeah, the little search engine that I used to go and find out about where the funding was going. He's listed in there too. Oh yeah. So I went to Harvard. Yeah, that money went to Harvard, and through Harvard it went over to China. Interesting. So remember that 3 men make a tiger. Remember that when you're listening to the news. Remember that when people are telling you that the coronavirus 2, SARS coronavirus, aka COVID-19, aka the CCP virus, or the Wuhan flu, was never designed in a lab. Yeah, that's magical, because something that would take thousands of years to develop naturally in the world and proven takes at least 1,000 years to develop in the world. Took only 10 years to achieve its ability to bond to humans in the manner that it's been able to bond and be so destructive. So do me a favor, if you would, please go over to YouTube. If you're watching this on Facebook, please go over and like and share over on YouTube. The channel is Treasure Quest Snake Island, the real story, and that's actually where it helps me, and it helps me provide more research and more information for you to educate and edify yourself. So again, thank you for your time, and if you get a chance, also go pick up a copy of the Bamboo Chest over at Amazon.com, and have a great day. Talk to you tomorrow.